going to start off is we need to figure out where our power source is. This is pretty nice. This one's right here, right below the control box. Now we're going to open this up. Got to pull this little tab out, and we're going to get in here. You can see that we haven't been in this box for a little while. Got some good fuses, a lot of spider webs and things like that. Whenever you're getting into something like this, make sure you don't put your fingers in. You want to use something plastic. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this power off, and that should bring out the knife blades right here and here, disconnecting the power. Just to be sure, we're going to check that power so we don't shock ourselves. So on our little voltage meter here, we're going to go to the bottom of the fuses and check. Now that's not reading any voltage there. We can come up to the top of the knife blades and make sure there is no voltage there. Okay, great. That way we won't get shocked. Next thing we want to do is we want to get into our pressure switch. Now our pressure switch is what actually controls when our pump goes on and off. Okay? In our pressure switch, we've got points here where our power comes in. See, we have two lines here coming down, and then we have two lines coming back up to our control box. So within these points, we need to make sure that they're very clean and have good contact. What we can do is we can do a little trick. We can take a little piece of sandpaper here in between the points, and all we got to do is sand them up a little bit. That way they're nice and clean. Okay, now before we change this pressure switch, we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at our pressure gauge. Our pressure gauge is sitting kind of back here close to the wall. And what we're going to look at is to see if our pressure gauge will actually go down to zero. Now we know our pressure gauge right now is at 50 pounds of pressure, which is usually on top on a 100-pound gauge. So we'll watch this, make sure it goes down to zero, and make sure that that gauge is working correctly. So let's go ahead and turn our water on and drain our tank. So to change this out, what we need to do is make sure that our power is off so we won't get electrocuted. So let's go ahead and check that with our voltage meter to be safe. Check our both lines. There we have no voltage, and there we have no voltage. The nice thing about this system is we've got color-coded wires to make sure that power coming in and power going out are separated. So let's go ahead and start disconnecting these. A lot of times you can use a common screwdriver, or what people call a flathead screwdriver, or a Phillips. It's all depending on what style of pressure switch you got. So let's go ahead and start taking these apart. Now you'll have a little lock ring right here. A lot of times you just use a screwdriver, put it up against the side, and just pound it out, and it'll free up. Then you can use your finger just to screw it off. This is going to come up, slide that lock ring out and your wires, and set that to the side, and we'll put that back on later. Now what we're going to use is a set of vice grips to hold our valve stem and a 3/4 inch wrench to take our pressure switch off. Now don't worry about it if your water is coming out this valve stem. You've released most of the pressure off of it. It's going to be normal because the majority of the time your intake to your tank is going to be lower than what your faucets are. So you will have some water coming out of there. Now, while you've got it here, one of the things that you really want to do is take a narrow screwdriver. I usually use a Phillips, and you want to get that in here. Make sure that that valve stem is clean, because a lot of times the water is just sitting in there and rusts up. You want to have a nice opening so you can have good water pressure to open and close your pressure switch. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little Teflon tape, wrap it around, making sure that you don't have any going over the hole, because that'll just clog it and you won't get any correct pressure readings. Take your new pressure switch and put it back on. Now that we've got our pressure switch back in, always make sure that you're getting that pressure switch to the same position that you had before. It makes putting the wiring back in a lot easier. So let's go ahead and put our wires back on. Now your lock ring doesn't have to be that tight. Good and snug so she doesn't move around. Now we're going to put those wires back on the way they were before. Okay, now we've changed our pressure switch and everything's back to normal. One of the things that you always need to look at is your pressure switches come in different varieties. Now, the one that we just pulled off is a 40-60, just like the one that we put back on. Sometimes there are 30-50s. So, always need to make sure that you have the same pressure. Now, because we're working on a little bit older house, we're going to go ahead and back down the pressure just a little bit. And you're going to be doing that with this screw right here. You don't want to mess with this one too much, because this one is the one that does your variance, being your turn on and turn off. So let's go ahead and grab a 3/8 nut driver and go ahead and back that one off. Just a few turns goes a long way. So let's go ahead and turn our pump back on and see what we got. Okay, now we've got our pump turned on. We're going to do some fine adjustments just to get this pump up to running at 50 pounds of pressure. So we're going to go ahead and turn that on and see. Well, our pump's hit 53 pounds of pressure. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead, unscrew it just a little bit more so where the pressure goes down. Now if the pressure needs to go up, we'll go ahead and turn it clockwise to tighten it, and that'll increase our pressure. But always remember, we never really want to go over 60 pounds of pressure. And there we are, 50 pounds of pressure.